red line on Iran the same as Israel's? And just as a follow-up, is there any reason to be suspicious of Israel's claims on this, or should we pretty much take them at face value?
Well, I think the second question is an interesting one. I mean, the Israelis have talked about the zone of immunity where the Iranians would be able to start doing things, for example, in their facilities that are burrowed deep inside a mountain. And so that was their red line for a while. Then we started hearing about different red lines. And so the Israelis have, I think, moved the goalposts a little bit. But at the end of the day, what they're concerned with is Iran's ability to quickly assemble a weapon. And they want to be able to intervene before that is able to happen. And that's what I think the red lines are that we're talking about right now, and why I think we are probably months away from the Israelis trying to do something to prevent this from happening.
So we're talking about red lines. I have a very simple question. I'll point at your direction, Buck. Should we have red lines?
I don't think this administration believes in red lines. We discussed whether or not it actually is a red line, whether we should change the color. It's kind of more of a yellow line now for the administration. I think that as a concept, they find it to be almost beneath them in terms of their international relations philosophy. Right? There should never be a point at which you have a definite reaction to something. There's always room for negotiation, for nuance, for moving the goalposts around a little bit. We can always find a way to talk out of these things. I think that they don't believe in the concept of red lines, but they recognize that it's politically useful to talk about them. I also think that we're seeing, if the choice is now or never, they're pretty fond of never.
Well, and it undercuts, though, the credibility of the President of the United States. If he says this will happen, there will be consequences over and over and over, and then nothing happens, well, would any actor in the world pay any attention to what the President of the United States says will be their punishment if it's never meted out?
I'd like to ask Jonathan, if just assume, for argument's sake, that there is a red line on either Syria or Iran. If this red line's crossed, what do? That's the bigger question to me. I mean, okay, here's the red line. We cross it. Now what?
Right, and I think what you have in the case of Iran is perhaps the threat of military force, but I don't think that, quite frankly, this administration has the stomach for that sort of thing. I think in that case, what you might find is that this administration finds a compromise, and that would be, for example, to provide the Israelis with some of the ordnance that they need and perhaps some of the technology to be able to carry out a strike on their own. That might be what happens if the Iranians, in fact, cross that red line. On the question of Syria, I really don't have an answer. We're obviously deeply concerned about what the Russian response would be, what the Chinese response would be, what the Iranian response would be if we were to intervene and prevent Assad from continuing to fire those chemical weapons.
Essie, I also think that there's a recurring theme here where the Israelis publicly, through, for example, Prime Minister Netanyahu, they'll draw a line in the sand. We're having a lot of line and metaphor discussions here. They'll draw a line in the sand, and they'll be like, you guys, if we go past that, then, and then they'll go, okay, well, now here's the line in the sand, and here's the line in the sand as we're marching down along here. And it seems like at this point, I think the Obama administration figures that there's no political consequence to it, so they don't really have to worry about the lines in the sand that the Israelis are drawing, even though, of course, they always say they're our closest ally.
Well, yeah, to that end, let me throw a wrinkle into this debate, this conversation, and ask Jonathan about another new development out of Israel. This Monday, Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel and Israel's Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon announced an unprecedented U.S. sale of advanced military equipment to Israel. This is leading, and this is according to the Times of Israel, and this is leading some to believe that Israel might be, in fact, preparing a strike on Iran. What are your thoughts?
I think Israel is absolutely preparing for a strike on Iran. I think they've been preparing for this for quite a long time. In fact, I would probably suspect that there are several plans, and they're just going to have to choose one at the end of the day. I think that there have been several intense discussions taking place between the Israelis and the United States. We know that, for example, Ehud Barak, the outgoing defense minister, came here and met with Secretary Hagel right after he came to the Pentagon. And so this is not the first meeting that Mr. Hagel has had with Israeli officials about the sort of technology and ordnance that the Israelis need. And certainly I think they're not doing this to attack Hamas or Hezbollah. They're thinking right now about Iran, which is really the only existential threat that they discuss right now.